Okay, so that's stress. This workshop is help for the overwhelmed parent, relaxation, mindfulness, and me. And I think if you got yourself here to this webinar and blocked out everything else you were doing, that's certainly a step in the right direction. I've done this workshop for parents and professionals, and what I recommend is that you be here completely now. In other words, turn off your Blackberries, turn off your iPhones, and most importantly, turn off what else might be on your mind, what you did before you got to the webinar and what you have to do later, and just be here completely. I'm having some trouble moving the PowerPoint to the next slide, Adam.
Okay. Let's see.
I have the first slide up there, and I'm trying to move it to the next one.
Okay, all you have to do is there's little arrows at the top, right under the it says stress management, and then it says 01, got stress, help, and overwhelmed.
Oh, okay,
the
got
arrow
it.
button to the right.
Okay, thank you. Whoops.
Advance the slide.
Okay. So sometimes this is what happens. We try to relax better and faster. We want to get that relaxation in as best we can. So what I'm presenting today, and why I think it's so important, is that parenting can be very challenging and stressful. You all know that. And you may be juggling at any one time many demands from home and from work and from all the relationships you have in your life. We have a set point, a way of being in the world and dealing with our lives that determines the stress we experience. And my invitation to you during this webinar is to reflect on whether your set point is optimal for your physical and emotional health. And I really want to raise the challenge that if you're able to manage your stress effectively, you will be a more effective parent and more positive role model. What we'll be talking about today is we'll be defining stress and the effects that it has on us. We'll be talking about where stress comes from, spending some time on time management, and sometimes our negative belief systems that come into play. We'll be talking about what mindful parenting is, and I'll be presenting some information about relaxation. And the exciting part for me is that we'll get to practice a bit so that you can leave here with some real skills for how to manage your stress. The definition of stress is that they are situations, conditions, people, or things that have the potential to imbalance us, to trigger the stress response so that we experience what we call dysregulation. And you probably all know this because the media and NIH, for example, has really been very active in helping us understand that the mind and body are intimately connected. And we want to manage stress effectively so we don't get emotionally depleted and physically ill, because stress can suppress the immune system enough to increase our risk of developing physical illness. Just want to take a minute to talk about what happens when the brain experiences stress. If you think of the brain, if you think of the finger that's in the middle of the hand, that's the amygdala, or the part of the brain that reacts in a kind of a survival mode. There was once a story I read about a woman about 5'4", who, when her child fell under a car, she actually lifted the car up to get her child out. That's the amygdala working. The amygdala is in a survival mode. And if you put down your fingers over that amygdala, that's the prefrontal cortex. That's much more about thinking, planning, and about the regulation of the brain. Sometimes when we're triggered by stress, by the cortisol that comes into play, we may flip our lid so then our hand is open, as an example, so that our rational brain and our emotional brain are not communicating. When we're triggered, our feelings may be big and intense, and we may not be able to access the logical problem-solving part of our brain, and this can cause us distress. It can happen on a daily basis. Sometimes when I get home from work late and my husband of 40 years hasn't emptied the dishwasher, I may flip my lid. Or maybe I'll flip my lid over something that's way bigger than that. But in any event, what I want to try to do is get that prefrontal cortex back online again and decrease my distress. Our children may be flipping their lid a lot, especially if they've been exposed to any trauma. And distress can cause lots of physical symptoms. We can have muscular symptoms, cardiovascular symptoms. Our endocrine system can be out of whack. We can have problems with our gastrointestinal parts of ourselves. We may be more prone to illness. We may have all kinds of physical problems if our stress is out of control and we flip our lid. Sometimes there are behavioral symptoms of stress and burnout. It may be that we're overwhelmed and trying to do so many things at once that we may be chronically late. Our behavior may be impulsive. We may be experiencing restlessness, which can result in sleeping issues. We may be sleeping more. We may have trouble sleeping at night. We may be eating more. We may be eating less. We may feel more isolated because we're feeling burned out, don't want to be around people. We may be more accident-prone if we're under a lot of stress. Some of you may be experiencing some of these things. You just know that they might have to do with stress. And then there are emotional symptoms of stress. It can be agitation, anger, anxiety, depression, guilt, fear. We may feel more hopeless and helpless about the future. We may be more irritable. We may feel more worried. And this is kind of the background. And when we are experiencing distress, our resources can get depleted both physically and psychologically. We may feel overwhelmed, and that's when we get burned out. When cynicism, pessimism, and negativity may set in, and it may happen to us at home, perhaps because of challenging issues we're dealing with, and it can happen at work, and when it happens in both places, it's really a double whammy. Stressors come externally. What we understand from the research is that sometimes it's easier to deal with major life crises like the death of a loved one or an illness or a move or a divorce or a job loss. Easier. I don't mean that it's easy, but we may have more coping skills because we're encouraged to get support and to talk about those issues. And in our society, they're deemed very stressful. But in research, they found that it's the everyday hassles, like paying the bills and getting dinner on the table and shopping for food and mowing the lawn and all of those things, driving kids around in carpools, that may cause us that stress. And the stress may be brief. It may be that we got into a fender bender in the morning and that causes stress. The stress may be externally chronic. It may be that we're sandwiched in between young children and dealing with taking care of an elderly parent. The stress may be periodic. Perhaps it's we have to get reports into work by a certain time every month, and those periodic stresses are hard to deal with. Or it may be more acute. For instance, getting mugged or robbed or something that is an acute stressor. So certainly stressors can come from outside. But what some of the more difficult stresses might be to think about are the ones that come internally. It may be from the culture. It may originate from the culture you come from your family of origin and how they dealt with stress. Did your family talk about things that were stressful? Was confrontation allowed, or did everything sort of go underground? You also have role models for how to deal with stress. A story that I tell just to put illustration, I think, of this point is my dad, who visited me when he was in his 80s. We were driving. I was driving. He was sitting next to me in the car. And when the car in front of me didn't accelerate immediately when the light turned green, my father reached over and honked my horn. That was my role model for stress. So I had to really, I had to deal with that a lot and figure out how to overcome that. And then the other thing is our personalities are wired a certain way. We may see this in our children, we see this in ourselves, and we may have we may have attention deficit, for example, and have to really manage that kind of stress coming from there. So, okay, now we're going to talk about some strategies. Sorry, I went too fast. The time management is the next strategy we're going to be talking about. And as busy parents, if you think about a pie being your life for the day without sleep, which is certainly a big part of hopefully a big part of every day. But if you just think about the pie that is your schedule, and you think about how to fill it in, is there any room in this pie for you? Is there any room in this pie for self-care? How much time do you give yourself in a day, in a week, in a month, or do you always come last? And if you're dealing with raising a family and with challenging children, it may be that you don't take care of yourself in the way that you could, and your own needs aren't met. So what do we do about that? I know you all know the word prioritizing. It's easier said than done. What do we say yes to, and what do we say no to? We may think about the things that we really need to do. We got to get food on the table. We got to pay that rent or that mortgage. Got to keep our jobs. There are lots of things we need to do. There are a lot of things that we feel like we have to do, and maybe really question that, because are you leaving any room for the want-tos? Are there want-tos in your life? How can you eliminate what you need to do and what you think you have to do so that you have some time for yourself? That can be a really big question. What do you need to do to have some time for yourself? Do you need 20 minutes a day of uninterrupted time? Perhaps if you're a working parent, when you get home from work, do you need 20 minutes or even 5 minutes to sort of come down and de-stress? And whom do you need this time from? Do you need or what kind of time do you need? Do you need to walk? Do you need to exercise? Do you need to spend more time with friends? Do you need a quiet moment of meditating? Do you need it from your spouse? Do you need it from your partner? Do you need it from your kids? And when do you need it? Do you need to take time when you get home from work? Do you need it in the morning? Do you need it after the kids are in bed at night? Really think about getting enough time for yourself. And then we're going to be talking now about negative belief systems, starting with this really interesting quote, I think, and that is that we are what we think. We look at the world through our own lens and oftentimes create our own reality. It's all about our perception of the world. And I'm going to be explaining that much more fully. That may be a bit confusing. So here's a picture of a record, because sometimes the way we talk to ourselves and how we think about ourselves creates a reality and our perception of the world. We may become our own critic, our own critical parent, kind of like a broken record. I remember records. I don't know how many other people do. But our own broken record, replaying childhood messages over and over again. in situations that may be either inside or outside of our awareness. Maybe we really aren't even aware of doing it. But this negative self-talk reflects our self-concept and can cause us distress. And the invitation is to really think about whether sometimes we basically are our own worst enemy. Do we treat ourselves with compassion, or are we critical? So what may happen is something at work or at home with one of the kids, maybe a tantrum or a child who's not cooperating at bedtime, or a teenager who gets in trouble. So a specific situation can trigger that amygdala, that back to the hand where we flip our lid and we're in a survival mode. We're in that fight, flight, response mode. Negative thoughts may then come up about ourselves or about the situation. Maybe we awfulize. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And then we may get an emotional reaction. We may feel fear, we may feel anger, we may feel anxiety. And what happens is the body holds the stress symptoms, and then unhealthy behavior may result. So this would be an example of how a negative belief system works. We're triggered in a specific situation. Negative thoughts arise. And oftentimes, again, it's about ourselves. I wasn't competent enough. Or here I go, I don't know how to handle this enough. Or I'm not a good parent enough. I'm not a good something enough. And then we get an emotional reaction. We may feel dread and anxiety and worry. And then what happens? Our shoulders start aching. Our stomach gets upset. And what we'll be talking about in a few minutes is how to reframe that negative system of thought with affirmation. So a stressful belief system may include unconscious messages that are out of our awareness. This conflict is dangerous, that I'm not allowed to set limits, that my needs are not okay or they're not as important as other people. I'm not competent enough. I'm not good enough. It's not okay to express my feelings. I'm not supposed to get angry, upset, or cry. And I am supposed to be all things to all people. Sometimes we do that to ourselves as parents. So if we substitute an affirmation like I am peaceful, I'm calm and relaxed, I'm good enough, and maybe if you're a person of faith, I'm at one with God, I'm in control of my mind or body, these affirmations can combat the stress of negative thinking. They can reprogram ourselves so that we create what we want. And what they say about the brain is that if your brain is like a broken record and it skips, it doesn't move on, and you're constantly, critical of yourself, those neurons in your brain begin to fire certain pathways. And neurons that fire together wire together. So the opposite is true. If you begin to substitute affirmations for negative belief systems, you're creating different neural pathways in the brain. Your brain actually can become wired differently. You can think about this with your kids as well. This is for anyone. Do your children have negative belief systems? Can you help them actively look at them and bring those systems, those beliefs, to awareness so they're no longer as under the surface and driving our emotions and behaviors? So, okay, now we're in the fun part. Now we're going to talk about relaxing. I want you all to think, not necessarily share it with me, but to really think about what are you already doing to relax. Because in a few minutes we'll talk about how important relaxation is. Real relaxation. So what are you doing to relax? Do you take walks? Do you exercise? Do you meditate? Do you do yoga? Do you read books? Do you take a bath? Do you knit? Drinking wine and having donuts and coffee, there are ways to relax, but they're not the healthier ones. So what healthy ways do you already have to relax? To really think about that, again, going back to time priorities, do you have enough time to do that? But to really acknowledge that you probably are doing some things to relax. And when you relax, are you able to be really one-pointed? In other words, are you able to just shift into that relaxation mode without thinking about what you have to do, what you did yesterday, what you're having for dinner tonight? So when you're relaxing, do you really relax? And sometimes television is one of the ways we have to relax, and television and movies really help us to be one-pointed and not be thinking so much. That's why they're so relaxing. But anyway, I'm going to be talking about different ways to think about relaxing. And what I want us to do is start with the breath. Okay, we take about 24,000 breaths a day. And each one of those breaths is an amazing opportunity to manage our stress. Breathing can be the anchor point for dealing with stress, and it may be one of the single best techniques to facilitate emotional and physical relaxation. And what I want each of you to do for just a moment is sit, if you're sitting down or lying down, feel whatever it is under you, your chair, the couch. If your feet are on the floor, feel the ground under you, and begin to notice your breathing. Breathe in and breathe out. Notice the in-breath. Is it the same length as the out-breath? Notice if the in-breath is longer or shorter than the out-breath. Some of us who do a lot in the world and take care of other people tend to breathe out longer than we breathe in. Kind of a metaphor. So you might want to breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out 2, 3, 4. Breathing in and breathing out. You can count to 6 or you can count to 2, or you don't have to count necessarily. You may have in your mind, I'm breathing in lightness and air, and I'm breathing out anything I don't need right now. So the breath is a really important foundation for stress management. And we're going to be putting this together with relaxation in just a bit. But what I want to talk about right now is how mindful parenting fits into this. Because if we're mindful about our parenting, it can help us have control over our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavioral patterns. We can observe without reacting to what's going on inside of us, so that we can be a responsive parent rather than a reactive parent. Maybe breathing can help us observe ourselves. We'll be talking about that as we go along. And with mindful parenting, we can be curious, compassionate, and non-judgmental, so we can parent more effectively. Dan Siegel, who's a neurobiologist who's done a lot of work in mind, and he's written a lot of books for parents, talks about how with mindful parenting we can have mind sight. He talks about mind sight as being the ability to understand ourselves and our own emotions and understand what's triggering to us, whether it's at work or from a partner or from our children. So one of the techniques of mindful parenting is a technique called stop, drop, and roll, which I'll be talking to you about in a moment, but it's a practice of self-intervention to help you feel in control of your stress. And mindful parenting is a strategy for disrupting your own negative patterns of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors again, so you can practice parenting from a place of self-regulation and awareness to give you the ability to respond to your children or anything going on that's stressful in your life rather than react. So stop. Okay, that means take time out. If it's possible, walk into another room if you're in an exchange with one of your children and it's difficult. Or if it's not possible to leave the room, just breathe. Again, breathing in and breathing out to bring yourself into the present moment. Because oftentimes we don't stay in the present moment. When something happens with one of our kids, we react because, oh my goodness, they're always going to have tantrums. I can't do anything right. They can't do anything right. What does this mean about them? Oh my God, when they're a teenager, they're never going to get into college and they're going to be a sociopath. Remember when my daughter was a teenager, I had this fantasy when she was acting out a lot. She was going to be a drug addict bad lady. She's anything like that now. She's a very successful adult. But I was worried. So stop means stop the action that's going on outside, and do it with compassion and without judgment, so you can drop into yourself. Drop into the present moment, feel the ground under you, breathe and connect with that calm place inside. So you have the capacity to roll out with a new strategy or response that comes from a less stressed out place. So stop, drop, and roll is a technique that I've taught many parents over the years, and it can really help in those very difficult moments when you're awfulizing, thinking about, oh my goodness, what's going to happen in the future. Be with what's happening right now so that you don't get triggered, so that you're not coming from a reactive place, and so you don't flip your lid. So, mindfulness is very much related to relaxation. It's not the same thing, but mindfulness can put us in the present moment. And if we can combine being mindful with really learning how to relax, there are a great deal of physical and emotional benefits. We actually physiologically breathe deeper. Our muscles get relaxed. Our heart rate decreases. They've shown, again, with research that blood pressure decreases. Our metabolism slows down and our hormones get more balanced. So all that's going on physically and emotionally, with deep relaxation, we can have clear thinking. We can be less jittery and irritable. Can feel a decreased sense of urgency, and that helps us feel more energy so that we actually are more productive and efficient. We have a decrease in anxiety and mild depression. We can feel more open. And it can give us an internal sense of strength. And isn't that something that we all want, is an internal sense of strength? So there are lots of different ways to relax. We can breathe into our body, which means breathe slowly and deeply, starting at the very top of our head, and then relaxing our muscles all the way down to our toes. We can use progressive relaxation, which is focusing on relaxing each muscle, first tensing each muscle and then relaxing each muscle, so that we can really understand the difference between relaxing and being stressed. Another strategy can be using cue words, silently saying, I'm peaceful and calm, I'm at peace. For some of us, we can use imagery. to create a mental picture of what we want in our life. For example, bringing to mind a safe place, a relaxing place that we've been to in nature may help us create a mental picture. And then we can use meditation. Not sure how many of you have meditated, but all meditation is focusing our awareness using the breath, a mantra or a phrase, or mindfulness. So mindfulness is related to relaxation because if we are in the present moment, we're being mindful, we're much more able to watch our thoughts, to watch our reactions, to observe them with compassion so we can get back to that internal sense of self and relax. So let's put it all together for a few minutes. I know this is a bit unconventional. I can't see any of you. I wish I could. But I assume that you're all sitting out there listening. And what I want you to do, like we did with the breathing, we're going to practice this for just a few minutes. There's no right way. There's no wrong way to relax. For each person, it's different. The goal is just to have an experience on the phone for a few minutes of having your body and your mind feel relaxed. It's just a question of listening to my voice and just, if you find that your mind is wandering, to just gently bring it back to the sound of my voice so that you can experience this relaxed, mindful place inside and then get hooked on it and want to continue to understand and to learn about relaxing, what works for you. At the end of the workshop, I'll have some suggestions for how you can get it relaxing in the outside world. But let's put it all together now. So what I'd like you to do is to sit again, noticing yourself grounded in your seat, with your feet on the floor. We'll begin by practicing relaxing for just a few minutes. Begin by breathing, noticing your in-breath, noticing your out-breath. Just following those breaths and starting with the top of your head. Just imagine that your forehead is relaxing. Lengthening, relaxing all the muscles in your forehead and then bringing that relaxed feeling down to your cheekbones and your face. Relaxing the muscles in your face. Breathing in relaxation and breathing out what you don't need. If your mind is wandering, that's fine. That's the nature of the mind. Just breathe gently back to your own breath or perhaps to my voice. Now allow that relaxed feeling to spread down to your neck and your shoulders. Notice if your head is resting comfortably on your neck, because the neck and shoulders is often a place where we hold in stress. And allow that relaxed feeling to loosen up and relax all of the muscles in your shoulders and your neck. And now allow that relaxed feeling to spread down to your arms, to the top of your arms, down to your wrists and your hands, allowing all the muscles and all the tendons in your arms and your hands to completely and totally relax. Breathing in lightness and air, releasing whatever it is that you don't need right now. Now allow that relaxed feeling to spread to your chest. Breathing in lightness and air and breathing out what you don't need, allowing that relaxed feeling to spread down from your chest, down to your stomach, your abdomen, even imagining that you're breathing into your internal organs, breathing in, breathing out. Allow that relaxed feeling to spread around to your back. Imagining that all the muscles and tendons and fibers in your spine are relaxing, lengthening, and you are relaxing. Breathing in lightness in the air, and releasing whatever it is that you don't need on your out-breath. Now allow that relaxed feeling to spread down to your legs, to your thighs and your knees and your calves and your feet and your toes. Allowing all of the muscles and fibers and tendons in your legs and feet to totally and completely relax. If you're feeling any tingling or feeling the legs feel heavy or numb, it's all a sign of deep relaxation. Just relax your body, breathing into the relaxation, breathing out what you don't need right now. Noticing if there are any places in your body that may even need to be breathed into, any places in your body that may need to be released. Breathe into those places. Breathe out any stress and tension. If your thoughts are wandering, that's okay. Just be mindful. Maybe your thoughts are wandering to something mundane and ordinary. Maybe you're having bigger emotions. It's okay. Just bring yourself back to your breath. Whatever it is that your mind is doing, just know those as thoughts. Bring yourself back to your breath. And just for a moment, we're going to imagine a place that we may have been to in nature. Perhaps it's a place we went to, or even a place we want to go to. Maybe we were there when we were a child, or maybe we were there last week. Whatever this place is, it may be the beach, it may be a lake, maybe the mountains. Just see that place with your eyes completely, with those senses. All of the colors and the vistas and the hues of the water or the trees, or the mountains, or the grass. Now imagine that you're hearing birds, insects, the waves breaking on the beach, the leaves of the trees rustling in the breeze. Let yourself smell whatever smells there are, perhaps flowers or salty air. And the invitation now is to feel what this place has for you with your body. Feel the breeze, feel the warm sun. Just be with that, knowing that this place is a safe place for you to return to inside. And that with some effort and some mindfulness, you can return to a relaxed place inside as a break from whatever stress is going on with you. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to come back to whatever room you're in. Feel yourself on your seat. Feel your feet on the floor. Remember what you're wearing and what the room looks like. And at the count of 5, just bring yourself back to the room, feeling refreshed and awake. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come back to the room slowly on 5. 5. Okay, everybody, welcome back. I hope that was a nice break. And wondering for you today, what are your barriers to taking care of yourself? Just think to yourself, what can get in the way of you taking 5 minutes to relax, or maybe longer? What are the barriers to really thinking about what your negative belief system is? What barriers are you creating, and what could you do about them? something for you to think about later on, perhaps. So, remember to keep the lamps burning, as Mother Teresa said, because to do that, we have to keep putting oil in it. Got to keep refueling to keep that lamp burning. So, I have a lot of favorite authors. And unfortunately, I forgot to put someone on here, Tara Brach. I think it's B-A-R-A-C-H. She's a local meditator and runs a mindfulness program. There are other authors on here, audios, and then one of the podcasts and apps that's really interesting is Meditation Oasis. So you may want to check that out. So I thank you for listening to me today. I hope that you feel more relaxed than when you started. And Carol, I think we can open it up for questions.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay. Yes, we can open up for questions. Please raise your hand. There's a little hand icon on the right of the toolbar underneath the participant list. And I just raised my hand to show you how that works. And then when you're called on, you can then unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay. Oh, I don't see any questions. And I don't think that that's a reflection of not understanding or not enjoying. I think that I found it to be the most relaxed that I have been at work for a long, long time, and I think it was just absolutely fabulous.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
And, if anybody would like to just comment, if you don't have a question, just a comment as to how you felt about it.
Or also perhaps some suggestions for how, or some ideas for how folks can use this in their life, or not. Maybe there's some folks who are saying,
we have some hands. We have some hands. So Sylvia Stady Viney, would you unmute yourself and ask your question, please? Hi, Sylvia. Are you there? No. How about Carla Castellone? Carla?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
What I'd like to know, is there any technique that you could recommend, like let's say if we're having, a conversation discussion with a teenager as to what they may be able to do to kind of set themselves out of the immediate conversation and say, okay, it's easier just to say, relax, but what are some things that they could do?
Well, I think some of the suggestions I had on the webinar about teenagers themselves being mindful. And one of the ways to really get into and learn to be mindful is just do what you're doing without thinking about 15 other things. So you may say to your teenager, just when you're sitting here, just be sitting here. When you're walking, just be walking. If you're doing the dishes, well, hopefully they may do the dishes, but more likely wash their hair or listen to music, to just be with whatever experience they're having. And maybe ask them, do they do that? When they're listening to music, are they completely there? Or are they thinking about 10 other things at the same time? And to just raise their awareness of, it's way more relaxing and less stressful to just be focused on what it is that you're doing right now, to really take in those relaxing moments of listening to music or going for a walk or being, engaging in a sports activity. So sort of have a conversation with them about, are they thinking about the next minute or what happened yesterday or 10 minutes ago? Can they be in the moment? And maybe talk about, breath and share with them your own challenges in trying to be less stressed out and trying to be mindful. So it's just really having a dialogue, trying to meet that teen where they are. One of the workshops we do at our agency is we have an interactive laughing yoga class, interactive laughter class. We use laughter as a way to help people relax and stay focused and mindful. So it doesn't always necessarily have to be with being quiet, but to just, how can they just be where they are now? And just open the door for that kind of dialogue. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I see Sylvia did unmute herself. Are you there still, Sylvia?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed it. I didn't really have a question, but I really enjoyed it.
Well, and we appreciate we appreciate your participation and your enjoyment.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Janet Mudd has a question mark next to her name. Janet? Okay. Let's go on to Sarah T. Hello? Sarah?
The question mark just means that they had a question in the Q&A that we answered earlier.
Okay. That's what those mean. All right. How about Queen Bellamy?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I just had a small question going back to the negative thinking. What do you do if the parent doesn't have negative ideas about themselves? How do you help them some of the rest?
You mean if a parent isn't very self-reflective or aware of what their behavior might be?
Right.
That's a really it's a real question about capacity, and I'd wonder what the parent's capacity for self-reflection is. And I guess I have so many questions around that. Are they engaging in any kind of counseling, so they could perhaps in a non-threatening way begin to think about some of their reactions to things. So that's kind of a hard question to answer. But I would want to know, are they, is it that they just don't really know how to be self-reflective? Do they not have the capacity because they haven't really done that? Is it scary to be self-reflective? No. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Danielle Strobeck just put up her hand. Danielle?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. My question is more for, I'm a mom of two young boys, 2 and 5. My 5-year-old has autism, and he's on the spectrum, and he has those termed, autism tantrums, and they can be minor and they can be extremely difficult. What would you recommend, or how would you recommend that I would teach him the skills in breathing? Because it really did help me as I was sitting through this seminar and just really trying to distance myself from my day. And luckily the baby was napping, so that helped.
Well, if you can do it, that's great, because then you have much more of a sense of what it is that you want to teach him. So one of the ways that you can teach kids about breathing, there's several ways. You can have them blow bubbles and slowly inhale and then slowly exhale and blow up the bubble. You can have him, put something on his chest like a toy and notice the rising and the falling of his chest.
Okay.
As a way to synchronize his breath.
What I'm hearing is wanting to
him.
draw his attention into the breathing, to make him aware.
Yes, exactly. It's the awareness is the first step. To just be aware. How much are we aware of our breathing? I mean, obviously, we all know we're doing it. We don't stop and think about it. And with a child who's got those challenges, to just help him be in his body in a non-threatening way. So just blowing, and get the bubbles that really are the good ones, the more expensive ones that really blow up. So he's not, it's not, it's not
my next question.
frustrating. Yeah. The kind of bubbles that you can actually, I'm blocking on what they're called, but they're not just the bubbles that just, don't blow up. So he can just be breathing carefully and have some fun with it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great question.
You're welcome.
Fabulous questions. We did have one question that was chatted. Do you have recommendations for stressed immigrant parents?
Wow. I've never been asked that question before. It's a great question, and I would think that unless I'm missing something, that some of these same strategies would be helpful for immigrant parents as well. There may be maybe more challenges sort of externally and how they, think other people think about them, and so helping folks to kind of be aware of that negative thinking cycle might be helpful. But I'm sorry, I really can't think of anything else that comes to mind. It's a good question.
Yeah, it is, and I think that yes, it is, for immigrant parents, and maybe a reference in that immigrant is a person, family who's undocumented and has all that added stress of worrying about that as well. And, looking at what's cultural in their, in that would bring them to those places that you talked about.
Great. Yeah, that's a great point, Carol. That's a really good point. What it is there about their cultural background that would help them feel, that could help them feel less stressed or maybe be contributing to their burnout.
Yeah. So, and let's see, we have another question. What about when my tween, who is completely focused on herself,
of course,
refuses to be mindful? Well, that's a good thing that she's focused on herself. So what happens when she refuses to be mindful?
Well, I think in those cases, and remembering back to when I had a tween, it's really about helping yourself not be triggered by her. So what can you do to not be triggered when she refuses to do something? Because really you can't make her. And how can you set an example for mindfulness by not being triggered by her reactions to you? That's really hard. As a parent, that's really hard.
I think that's exactly right. That's and it is hard. It is so hard to do.
Yes.
But
they don't stay. They don't stay narcissistic like that forever. They really don't. Someday they come back.
I did want to say something about that. I have a teen, and it's funny because I try not to engage in the back and forth talking. So, for example, yesterday I texted them and I said, hey, since you're home, these are a couple of things I want you to do. And one of the things that they despise is wash dishes. And she wrote back, she said, I'm not going to wash the dishes. I hate doing that. She put a smiley face. And I said, I know you don't, but I would love for you to do it. That was it. When I got home, the dishes were done. All the chores were done. So I find that if I just don't engage, and I just say, I understand, but I still need you to do it, it kind of stops them from continuing. It's just that back and forth.
Yes, it stops the power struggle. It stops them from escalating. And you're not nagging. And basically, you have to really manage your own reactions to be able to pull that off.
We have another question here. What do you say to teens who need to listen to music while studying? They insist it helps.
It sometimes does. I think that a lot of teens really believe that it does. Hopefully they've had they've had an example of doing it in quiet. And again, that's something that's really hard to control as a parent. Really hard to control. And just give them the option, really when you're multitasking like that, it's hard to concentrate on so many things at once, at least it is for me. So just ask them to consider, and that's probably all you can do.
Yeah.
So many things we have to let go of as parents.
We always have to pick our battles, don't we?
That's right. We have to pick our battles.
And I think, I remember with my children too, having the need to listen. And you know what? It's their grades, and yes, we want them to do their best. And we hope that by the time they get to that age that they want to do their best. So it's hard.
And logical consequences. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you have children who have special needs, it's even more difficult because, and as you said, sometimes it does help them to have that noise in their head while they're studying because it keeps them studying or reviewing. And then we have a comment, which I think is just absolutely wonderful. I will be at the beach while walking to work in this negative 15-degree weather. Just a comment.
Thank you. I'm glad you shared that. We can all try to do that today.
So I like that one. And thank you, Tabitha. Although where she is with negative 15-degree weather, oh, my goodness, I feel sorry for her because I don't think we have that in Maryland.
No,
so,
not that.
I don't think so. But do we have any other questions? Let's see. Danielle, Queen. Carla, did you get a chance to speak? I don't know if she's still on.
I did.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, wonderful. I don't see any other questions. Going once, going twice. All right, for those of us who are still on here, I want to thank everybody. I want to first thank Erica because this was absolutely fabulous. And as I said, I felt more relaxed in that time frame, and I don't even know what the time frame was. I put my alarm on so I wouldn't miss the time up, and I am planning to use that technique at least a few minutes every day at work because I think that it was wonderful, and I would ask everybody. I'm going to be sending out a copy of the recording. And for people who want to see it again or listen to it again. And I'm also going to be sending a short evaluation. And I would ask that you complete the evaluation and just send it back to me and so that we can show our funders that these are important webinars for parents, families, caregivers, and those who work with parents and caregivers of children with behavioral health concerns so that we can continue doing this. I also want to thank our partner, the Institute for Implementation and Innovations at the University of Maryland School of Social Work, particularly Adam, who I think is probably still here, quiet as he is. And again, apologize to everybody for the delay, and thank you all for coming on. Erica, any closing words?
No, just thank you, everyone, for participating, and good luck in your handling your stress.
Okay, thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.